Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure and honor being with you all here today. I think one of the things that makes me happy is coming in a room filled with human intelligence to talk about artificial intelligence. It just, makes me feel that the world is headed in the right direction. One of the things that I think any smart person would not do is ignore a prepared presentation and talk a little bit about a few thoughts that he's had. So that's specifically what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to keep the presentation up on the screen for a few minutes and share with you a few things that really inspired the UAE, that inspired me personally, and I hope will inspire all of you. I would like to start by asking you all a question. Who is from the Middle East region here? Please raise your hands. So a small group of people, but I'm sure that you can pack a punch if we put you to the test. But the reason why I asked you this question is because today this region is seen as a region that is a follower, a region that imports technology, a region that is not known to develop anything interesting, and really a region that has conflict and has a lot of issues that we need to resolve. This wasn't the case a few hundred years ago. In the year 813, we used to import science, technology, and innovation to the rest of the world. In the year 813, our culture was seen as the most advanced culture on the planet. And even before the first, second, and third industrial revolution, we started from this region the first human revolution, a revolution that created a melting pot of minds that really revolutionized the world. It brought to us the algorithm. It brought to us the alphabet. And it really changed the world as we know it. What was the reason for that? And that's the question that I found myself asking for many, many years since I was young. Reading our history, we've had such a rich history. So many inventions, so many innovations, and really the prosperity was unmatched. What went wrong? And recently I actually found the answer. And I would like to start by sharing this with you because I think that understanding history allows us to forecast the future. From the year 813 till the year 1455, this region was paramount. It was the envy of every country. It was the envy of every civilization. And the countless historical documents prove that leaders from around the world aspired to send their children or the people to go and learn. The reason for our advancement were two things. The first was tolerance. We were the most tolerant region in a divided world. Every person from every religion, every ethnicity, from all around the world used to come to this region, specifically to the House of Wisdom, which I consider the very first internet. It was the very first meeting point of ideas, of people that did not have a shared ancestry or a shared religion or a shared nationality, but people who shared a vision for a better future through science, technology, and innovation, and culture as well. This House of Wisdom was a place that was governed by a Christian. What was very interesting is in the Muslim civilization, in the year 813, at the very top and peak of our civilization, the most important asset was led by a Christian. That really, got me thinking. Why was that? That was because of tolerance. People with ideas, people who were doing research, could come from anywhere on earth and share ideas, learn, be able to develop their thinking, and take it to the other regions of the civilization. The other reason for our development was something that many people don't have today. And it was the thinking that the future is going to be positive, that everything we develop is going to be used in a positive sense, and that we are going to serve our constituents in the region positively back then. One thing changed in the year 1455. There was a new invention that was created that had so much potential. This technology was going to revolutionize every civilization it touched. It was welcomed by the European civilization, it was welcomed by the Asian civilization, and the only civilization that banned it in the year 1515 was the Muslim civilization at the time, wherein everyone saw potential Our civilization at the time saw peril. And in the year 1515, it was decreed illegal to be used. It was the Gutenberg printing press. And if you think about it, why that is such an important technology is in the year 1515, if you were in any civilization or any country that's not in the Muslim world, you can actually request for copies of manuscripts and transcripts to be sent to you. And you can sit in your home or sit in the library, read that content, and increase your intelligence. Collectively, society became a lot more intelligent. In our region at the time, because they expected that this machine will be used to create, fake copies of the Quran and fake copies of cultural scripts, it was banned, and people needed to ride camels for 3 to 4 months to access one manuscript, and then try to memorize it when they're there, and hope that they keep remembering it by the time they get back. So wherein everywhere on earth, people were getting more and more knowledge, we were getting less and less knowledge. And to this day, we are paying the price of that one wrong decision. I would like to think here about artificial intelligence. If you think about a technology that has the impact to revolutionize lives, to change the world, this is where we're at right now. We are in the year 1455. And this is the technology that we're dealing with right now. Now, I go to a lot of meetings, I meet a lot of people, and the first question they ask, why do you have a Minister for Artificial Intelligence? And what do you do exactly? So before going into artificial intelligence and the UAE, I'd like to talk to you about this role specifically, and why our leadership decided to go through this path. If you look at the last 150 years, certain technological innovations or inventions led to the creation of certain government posts. When we used to depend on coal and wood as an energy source, there wasn't a single minister of energy in any country on earth. It wasn't seen as something that needs to be regulated, governed, and controlled. No one cared. But then everything changed with the advent of electricity and oil. Suddenly, this energy source had a lot of implications. Economic implications, social implications. The whole country's future depended on this resource. So ministers of energy were put in place. And this became the norm ever since. If you look at a few years later, telecommunications, the internet. Before these technologies were invented, not a single minister of telecommunications or a minister of ICT was put in place. When we had the telegraph and pigeons that delivered letters from one place to another, there wasn't a person looking at that as an important sector that needs to be governed, regulated, and invested in, because it did not impact economy or society in any way, shape, or form. Now, AI is something that we hear a lot of people talking about. We hear leaders of certain countries say that whoever leads artificial intelligence is going to lead the future. President Putin said that. We hear China talking about the importance of AI. We look at what the US is saying as well. So my question is, if it's such an important and revolutionary technology, why isn't anyone looking at it seriously? It's because they don't understand it. As simply as that. If you understand how revolutionary it's going to be, you're going to understand that we're already too late and that we need to do something about it. Who here has dealt with AI before or used AI? Please raise your hands. Is it safe to assume 20 people out of the audience? Okay. I'm going to make a statement here that I can back. None of you can live without artificial intelligence. You use it every single day. It's closer to you than your loved ones and your family. It knows more about you than anyone else on this planet. And again, you cannot live without it. The first thing you see when you wake up in the morning is an artificial intelligence platform. The last thing you see before you go to sleep is an artificial intelligence platform. We've reached the point where, to answer our questions, we don't go to another human being. I don't care if I have the most, knowledgeable professor on earth. If Google doesn't give me the same answer, that person's wrong, right? So to answer humanity's questions, today we go back to artificial intelligence. My father and my grandfather's generations used to be able to tell me north from south, east from west, just by looking at their surroundings. I am sure that none of you can say that. Because today with Google Maps and with all of these artificial intelligence systems and platforms that help guide us from one place to another, we don't need to. And we are so dependent on these systems. And then finally, even our communications. Let me make a prediction here. You guys can talk to people on WhatsApp, WeChat, or whatever platform that you use for hours, but when we sit in a social context, when we sit together over dinner, we can talk for 20 minutes and run out of things to say. Is that correct? That is the case. Because AI is impacting our lives and it's changing our norms, it's changing our habits, and really, it's making a big difference. Now, some people think that it's digital, that this is never going to come into the physical realm. But again, I'd like to also correct this statement. Artificial intelligence is shaping the world in a positive and negative sense today. The Terminator scenario doesn't really worry me. I feel like, yes, this might come in the future, but there are bigger concerns today that we need to address. Among these concerns, let me share with you three. The first is today, because of AI, because of the vast amounts of data that these systems are able to extract from us, because of the platforms that we use, whether it's social media platforms, whether it's chatting platforms, and so on and so forth, they're able to influence spending habits. So we are reaching a point where the generations previous to ours were able to save money, were able to think and plan financially properly, and our generation isn't able to plan anything, because the moment they think of a watch, they get 100,000 adverts of the watches that they want to buy with specifically targeted ads that make them not resist that deal. Even if you look at the kids that live in this day and age. When I used to be 10 years old, I used to play a Nintendo or a PlayStation or whatever the device was, and I would pay once for the device, I'd pay once for the game, and play it for months on end. Today, children are bombarded with adverts on their smartphones, on the games that they play, and they spend far more money. So these systems are impacting our financial well-being, and we are spending a lot of money. And these things are going to cause issues in the long term, because I think our societies are not made to understand the long-term implications of people that are not able to collect money and save money for the future. The second, if we talk about the impact it has on governments. Some of you may know that a certain social media platform that I'm not going to name and shame was used to influence the politics of a specific country that I'm not going to name. Right? Now my question is that a digital interface, or is that a real tangible application of artificial intelligence in a way that might harm us in the long term? It's something that's concerning. The Terminator scenario might come in 2050. This exists today. And then finally, the final example, can AI cause genocide? Yes, it can. In a specific country, artificial intelligence, through a platform that I'm not going to name and shame, was used to push hate speech, and it caused people to be killed, people to be pushed out of their country, and a crisis like no other. I'm going to mention the crisis just as a reference. It's the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar, and you can do your research. Now, the application or the impact of artificial intelligence on these specific examples could be 1% or 100%. But since it played a role, it needs to be governed. And since it was used, we need to think proactively, because the moment this gets out of hand, it's going to be too late. So artificial intelligence is being used today. It's impacting our lives both positively and negatively, and we're not doing anything about it. So now you know why having a ministerial role is important. You know why these technologies need to be looked at carefully. And I'd like to share with you what my role is. And this is where, if you allow me, I'll go back to the presentation. In the UAE, we looked at the historical cues that I mentioned. So we were the most cutting-edge region in the world. We had tolerance. We were looking at the future optimistically. So instead of banning the printing press, if we actually adopted and used it in positive use cases, we would have continued to lead. Today, we have a country that is seen as the most tolerant country on earth. 200 nationalities live and thrive in the UAE. 90% of the population is foreign-born. And really, it is a beacon of hope in the most turbulent region on earth. So we have the first tick. We are tolerant, we have diversity. The second is we have a very optimistic leadership. Our leadership is optimistic that the future is going to be positive, even though we are in the heart of the Middle East, the most turbulent region in the world. Let me remind you, we are not an island that can just focus on development and forget all of the worries in the world. We are surrounded by countries that hit oil plants in other neighboring countries. We are surrounded by the highest number of failed states in the world. And we are optimistic because we believe that with proper planning, with proper investment, we can achieve this miracle in the desert that we've achieved so far. So that's our focus. And if these two things come together and we use artificial intelligence positively, we can rule this technology and we can become the leaders of this new era. Does anyone know what artificial intelligence depends on? Does anyone want to guess? Data. But not just data. There are 3 V's that are the source of, I would say, development or failure when it comes to artificial intelligence. There are 3 V's. Volume of data. So it's not just having data. It's about having volume of data. Variety of data. So how much diversity does your data set have? And that gives you an advantage over countries that don't have variety because they have a lot of bias. And then finally, velocity. So how fast can this data be used? And how fast are decisions being made that allow this technology to thrive? If you look at the UAE, we have the variety, as I mentioned, 200 nationalities. We have the volume, although some people might expect that we're a small country and we don't have the volume, but we actually do. If you think of Dubai Airport and the airports that we have here, over 100 million people go through this airport. It's the most crowded airport on the planet. That data is bigger than anything that exists in the US or China or anywhere else. If you look at our ports operator, DP World, it operates 68 ports across the world. No other operator has this much data. So we have the volume. And then finally, when it comes to velocity, the UAE went through a transformation process. That transformation process started from the year 2002. If you're going to look at an evidence that proves that our leadership is forward-looking, you could look at this chart. When the world was thinking about the internet bubble and talked about how the internet is not going to succeed and how computers might not be ubiquitous, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum and His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who was the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi at the time, worked on launching an e-government initiative. So when the world was betting against e-government and the internet, we betted that it's going to actually be worth investing in and creating as a platform. In the same period, in the year 2000, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed launched the Dubai Internet City and Dubai Media City. In a time when we were not known to be a tech hub, we were not known to be a media hub, and everyone expected these projects to fail. Today, nearly 20 years later, we see the internet and media converge. And we see Dubai as a hub for technology in this region. So someone planned something right. And this is something that doesn't happen by luck. In the year 2013, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed pushed the envelope. And he said, we don't want to have government services as traditional services. We want to go towards M-government services. We want every single person to have access to services on their mobile. Let me remind you that the smartphone was being used as a tool from 2007, 2008. So it's still not proven. Today, the smartphones that we have and the applications that we use are proven. We know that the future is in your handheld device. At that time, people were still not sure if that was the future. And we bet big on this. In 2015, the envelope was pushed again. And we were asked to work on a smart government transformation. And people were asking, are we ready? Is smart government the future? Is it something that we need to invest in? Now, when you look at all of these factors, you see that when the AI strategy was launched in 2017, all the groundwork has been done. Over the last 17 years, the infrastructure necessary for you to deploy AI, to collect data, for you to access people and for people to access you, was already late. I meet with a lot of ministers from Europe and from other countries, and they say, we have paperwork from the days of Napoleon. We have systems that are over 100 years old. Our question is, how can we deploy AI? We want to, but just taking over these revolutionary systems, sorry, these traditional heritage systems and making them into this cutting-edge AI system is going to cost us tens or hundreds of billions, because they're trying to do it all today. If they worked towards it over the years, they would have offset the cost and actually been in a position that's better than anyone else. So it's proactive planning. It's forecasting the future that takes you from a traditional government to an AI government. If I was a minister in any other country, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Asia or in Africa, I think I would have failed. But being in this country, having a leadership that understood the importance of technology and AI and data and all of that early on and invested in laying the groundwork for it, allowed us to thrive. So yes, I was lucky to be put in this post, but someone was planning far, far ahead. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President, Prime Minister, and ruler of Dubai, is a person that is known to take big bets. He's a leader that always says, I want to be the first, I want to be the best. And upon appointing the First Minister of Artificial Intelligence, he said that our priority is to be the most prepared country for artificial intelligence. What does he mean by that? That's a question that some people ask. Why would he say prepared? It's because the AI revolution is starting. It existed since 1950, but the technology was not realized until recently. And we don't know the impacts yet. We see some negative impacts, we see some positive impacts. If you are prepared, you will make use of the positives. If you are not prepared, you'll be challenged by the challenges and the disadvantages that will come because of artificial intelligence. So being prepared is key and paramount, and being agile is the key to being prepared. Some of the top think tanks and consulting firms have done a little bit of research on the impact of AI on the economy of the UAE. Accenture said that the impact of AI is going to be around $182 billion by the year 2035. PwC said $96 billion by the year 2030. So the numbers are big, and they're substantial. But I'd like you to pay attention to one thing. If we just looked at the economic gain, we will fail. And this is my advice to you. Don't look at the economic gain of AI, because the numbers are really appealing, and they seduce you to thinking that AI is a positive technology that can only lead to good things. But there are challenges that are going to come along the way. If you don't think of the social implications of AI and just deploy for the sake of economic gains, hundreds of thousands of people are going to lose their jobs. And that's going to lead to rioting in the streets, that's going to lead to people toppling down their governments, and that's going to lead to a future that none of us want. So you need to balance between the big numbers and its implications on people and how it changes their lives. So what's our competitive advantage? As I mentioned, the first is the unique and diverse data sets that we have. The second is we can actually develop and deploy AI quite quickly, much faster than anyone else. And the third is that we're able to actually use AI to empower the sectors that we are leading in and to also elevate our status in sectors that we want to improve. And I'll mention that in a little bit more detail in the coming slides. So why did the strategy come together? And why was this post put? We are known to be forward-looking and to plan far in the future. The leadership of the UAE came together and said, in the year 2008 or 2007, and said, we want to become one of the best nations in the world by the year 2021. At that time, let me remind you, we didn't have the best economy. We did not have the best society. We had challenges along the way. And people were naysayers. They did not expect that the UAE would be able to achieve these ranks. Today, the UAE is pointed at as a beacon of hope, as a model from a society perspective, from an economy perspective, and also a country that was able to leapfrog many indicators. So we were able to achieve something because of the vision. Now, we could have celebrated this in 2021 and said we did our jobs and every government official should retire and that's that. But our leadership believes that for us to keep going, we need to have more ambitious plans. So by 2071, by our 100-year anniversary, we want to be the best nation on earth. No one can refute what the best is. The best in education, the best in society, the best in infrastructure, the best in everything. And for you to be able to leapfrog and to become the best, you need to invest in the right technologies, you need to deploy the right applications far ahead and far faster than your competitors. So the first actual outcome of our centennial strategy was the AI strategy for 2031. And by then, we want to be among the leaders in the world when it comes to artificial intelligence. The vision is for us to be one of the leading countries in the world when it comes to artificial intelligence by the year 2031. And I personally believe that we'll be able to achieve that relatively quickly. There are two strengths that complement this vision. The first is we have certain assets and certain sectors in the UAE that are emerging that we can use. And the second, as I mentioned, is a smart government. So I don't want to dwell much on this, but we already have the infrastructure and we already have the assets. There are also opportunities. Our governance is a lot more agile. We can relatively quickly start sharing our data. And we have a relatively young population. It's very difficult for you to retool, reskill, and repurpose people who have been doing something for 50 years of their life. But it's easier, if you have a youth bulge, to repurpose this youth to focus on AI. So this is an advantage and an opportunity that we're going to use to ensure that the talent in the UAE becomes a pioneer of artificial intelligence. So we wanted to, I'm mentioning the ethics component, we wanted to set a motto or a slogan for us that will help guide us and our partners towards where we need to go with artificial intelligence. That motto was BRAIN, building a responsible artificial intelligence nation. Some of you might ask, why responsible? Why would you use this word? And the answer is actually in climate change. And I know that many of you might not draw the similarity there. Why does climate change exist? Climate change exists because of irresponsible urban and industrial development of certain countries. They developed their industries, they developed their cities or the country in a way that did not think about the long-term implications of polluting the environment and going at this accelerated pace. So irresponsible development led to climate change. And today, climate change is not something that we can overcome on our own. If the UAE decides to cut emissions to zero by tomorrow, we can't combat climate change. I will still feel its effects. Everyone needs to work together. So responsible development of AI is important to us. It's important to us at home, and it's important that our allies and everyone else in the world does. So we're going to work with everyone to ensure that this technology is developed responsibly, that the applications and implications are going to be positive rather than negative. So how are we going to do that? The first thing we wanted to do is develop a fertile ecosystem in the UAE, but also think regionally and globally. We have worked extensively in the first period to sign MOUs, to work with other countries and international organizations to push for this notion of responsible development of artificial intelligence. We're also trying to help countries that don't understand AI try to work with us to understand it, and also export the systems that we develop here to these countries to ensure that everyone benefits from this technology. It's not just one country, it's not just one nation. The second is we ran a few exercises to understand the AI ecosystem in the UAE and in the region. I'll give you an interesting statistic. So we worked with KPMG to do a survey of all the AI companies in the region. There were 380 AI companies in this region. Guess how many are in the UAE? Anyone? No, not all of them. I'd be very happy if that was the case. So 60% of the AI companies in this region are from the UAE. What that proves to you is a relatively small country in a region from Morocco to Pakistan has 60% of the AI talent of this region. So you can tell where the hub of artificial intelligence is going to be. And we need to ensure that these companies are served, that our policies are appealing to them, and that they stay here. And then the final thing that we worked on is talent development and talent attraction. So there was a lot of effort on that. The AI camp was one of the initiatives. 60% of the people who attended the AI camp were women. So I do believe that women are going to lead the technology revolution in the UAE in the future. And we expected to have 1,000 students participate. We had more than 6,500 students in the first year alone. And this year, we're looking to double that number. The other things that we did on these fronts is we launched the biggest AI event in the region, an event called AI Everything. In a time where Chinese companies don't talk to American companies, and American companies don't talk to Chinese companies, a country like the UAE said, we're going to work with everyone, we're going to showcase the technology as a whole, and we want to create a platform for AI. And in the first cycle of AI everything, it became the biggest event in the world. It connected east to west, the same way that Dubai and the UAE are known to connect east to west. We've signed 7 MOUs to cooperate with countries like India, France, Estonia, and others to actually accelerate the responsible development of AI and to set a guiding principle and framework of how we can work together as countries and how can we all benefit from this technology. We also worked on attracting startups and companies to set up in the UAE, because the same way that big bets were made on the internet, on media in the past, that today pay dividends, we know that investing in AI in the UAE is going to make you benefit in the long term. And then finally, we launched a global platform called the Global Artificial Intelligence Governance Forum, focused on bringing the best thinkers from around the world to help us know how should we govern this technology. And we launched a few reports out of that. So we don't expect to do this on our own. We all need to work together to ensure that this benefits everyone. With regards to the ecosystem, the biggest challenge with this technology is that it develops quite quickly. And if you think that you understand it, you already failed. So we launched an initiative called Think AI, which brings the private sector, academia, the public sector, and non-government organizations together to talk about the policy framework, to talk about the ecosystem, and tell us what we need to change. So this becomes our sounding board to understand if we are moving in the right direction or if we aren't and we need to change. And I mentioned the survey. Finally, we created something called the AI and Blockchain Council, which has representatives of the federal government and representatives of the local governments, because we want to make sure that this technology benefits every Emirati in every single emirate of the country, not just Dubai or Abu Dhabi, but everywhere. And there are certain emirates that have certain advantages over others that will ensure that AI can thrive in these emirates. And then, simply put, AI camp, I mentioned. The second thing is, I believe that the biggest challenge that's going to face countries in the future is not going to be the Terminator scenario. It's going to be ignorance within the decision-making process. If you are a leader that will take a decision about deploying AI or investing in AI, and you have no idea what artificial intelligence is, that's a recipe for disaster. So to overcome this issue, we launched a program with the University of Oxford to train 100 government officials across all our government departments for a full year to understand artificial intelligence, to understand the ethical implications, the moral implications as well, and to be able to audit that application to ensure that they become the advisors to our government officials when someone comes to present a solution for them. So we will never have the excuse of, I did not know what the impact of this is going to be, and I took a decision without being informed. We also know that artificial intelligence is not one technology. It's many technologies under a big umbrella. So there are certain skills when it comes to AI that can be gained quite quickly. So we launched the AI Skills Academy with the higher colleges of technology, focused on giving people a set of necessary skills that allows them to deploy AI in fields without having a formal education in computer science or a long-term education or a PhD. And then we also worked with companies like Dell and others to have an internship program for our students to go and experience AI firsthand and be able to shape it with these top companies from around the world. That being said, we're just being started. I'd like to thank you all for having me here today, and I hope that this gave you a snippet of where we're headed in the UAE when it comes to artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your rich and insightful presentation. I used to be Minister of Technology in my home country government, Tunisia, but you are far apart from where you are. Obviously, I was leading that ministry in turbulent times of post-Arab Spring Revolution. So the vision was impressive, the long-term perspective as well. And as you said, this is not new. This has been going on for a number of years. When I read your vision for 2071, that's really impressive. Your centennial anniversary, as you said. So I prepared a few questions, but I invite the participants through our platform and the app to submit your questions to His Excellency. So let me kick off this part to take it from what my colleague said on the videotape. You have the leadership, you have the push top-down, as you said, daring, bold initiatives taken by yourself and in partnership with others. How do you create the bottom-up, embracing this vision? How do you demystify AI with the layman in society? How can you create that? How create the digital culture and the technology uptake from the farmer to the merchant to everybody in the UAE society?
That's a superb question. That's why you're a professor in IMD and I'm a minister, because you ask the right questions. I need to learn that. But what I'm going to say on this is, it's very important for us to focus on top-down and bottom-up as well. They're equally as important. And the way that you communicate with the constituents that are less educated than the ones that care about artificial intelligence or that care about these technologies is even more challenging than it is to communicate with someone who has interest. So to overcome that challenge, we launched a series of different efforts. The first is our strategy is a very complex document. It has many different components in it, and it's a very boring document to read. I must be honest, I was forced to read it because we wrote it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed reading it voluntarily. But if you think about how you can transform that into something that goes viral, we transformed the actual strategy into a set of videos that would go viral on social media, on WhatsApp, and just talk about the sort of things that I asked you today. Do you use AI? Yes, you do. Can you live without it? No, you can't. And share these examples with people and say that because this is an important technology, we all need to work together to create it, to govern it, to actually play a part in it. There's also another important factor, which is that there's a new generation that you can influence that will influence both their families, the government, and the future. And that's the students. So to educate the students in the UAE, we are in January launching an AI curriculum across the schools in the country that starts from grade 4 till grade 12. Students will understand what AI is, the applications and implications of AI. They'll be able to code, hard code AI, not block coding, hard code AI by grade 9, and actually create AI systems by grade 12. Why is that important? Because these students are going to go home and talk to their parents. These students are going to create some platforms tomorrow that are going to become the revolutionary platforms of the future. And if one of them wants to become a doctor, he or she needs to understand the applications of AI in health. If they're going to become an architect, AI is going to go into architecture, engineering, you name it. If you want to become a lawyer, AI is going to go into law. So we need to ensure that the understanding is universal. And starting at the student level is a quick win for everyone. And then finally, most media outlets globally look at technology with a very fear-mongering approach. The Terminator is coming. We need to get prepared. And I don't think that's healthy. So we are working with the media as partners to help educate people on AI. Yes, there are challenges we need to look out for, but there are so many opportunities. You can actually become a pioneer. It's the right time to start now. So these are the efforts that we're doing on this.
Thank you. I was having dinner last evening with a couple of participants. I'm looking at them actually right now. And there is some important issues which you briefly mentioned in your address. They mentioned the issue of cybersecurity. They mentioned the issues of data privacy and job losses. When you talk about AI, people think of the downside of AI. How does the UAE government, and in your AI strategy, how do you address these concerns and these issues?
The first thing I'm going to mention is one of the key components of our strategy is cybersecurity. So we understand that it's not about deployment, it's actually safeguarding these solutions. Because if you don't safeguard it, it doesn't matter how many systems you launch. Tomorrow, there is going to be a negative application from someone who's able to hack and do some efforts of data poisoning, where they give the algorithm a wrong piece of data and makes it take a decision that will harm people, or something that might actually lead to people's privacy being lost. On privacy, I'd like to just mention a quick point here. If you think about who has your data today, who do you think has your data? The private sector, these platforms that we use daily. Now, I wouldn't say criticism, but one point I'd like to raise is the incentives of the private sector is to collect data and then monetize that data. That's why the private sector exists. They have stakeholders and shareholders that care about that. Are they incentivized to protect the data? No.
No.
And that's why we hear of the data breaches of 500 million people losing sensitive data, or a hack of platform X that led to Y. So I think government needs to step in. Because why does government exist? To serve all of you. Government exists for the people. The private sector should thrive, but it exists for its shareholders. So we need to differentiate there. Our approach is very simple. Innovation should not be hindered. We should not over-regulate. But we need to sit on the table with the private sector and ensure that citizens benefit. We need to ensure that people have a positive future and that their privacy and certain elements are not being touched upon. That also plays a big role when it comes to national security. I want to give you an example of a discussion I had with a gentleman a short while ago. This guy runs a platform that's very similar to Uber, so it's like an Uber-like platform in a country. I'm not going to mention the country. That system, because of the weak and bad infrastructure that existed in the country that they operated in, most people, around 80% of people in that capital of that city, were using this platform. One day, because of a bug, the actual application went down. And they were trying to fix it overnight. Suddenly, there were riots on the street. People thought that the government actually banned that platform and started to riot against the government because they're like, you don't provide us with proper infrastructure, and now you switch off the application that we use to move from one place to another, and we don't want this government. The Prime Minister called him and said, you have 1 hour to put this back online, or we're going to intervene. National security was affected by a platform that uses AI and collects data and makes people's lives easier. So governments need to work with the private sector to ensure that these issues don't create unrest, and to also ensure that privacy is not hindered. Yeah. That's our approach.
Let me start with some of the questions coming from the floor. There is a question about if you can tell us more about the UAE vision for 2071.
Our vision for 2071 is an interesting vision. Some people would go against setting a vision that far forward and would say, you need to be more realistic. The Vision 2071 has one main goal that everyone agrees on. We need to be the best nation on earth by 2071. But it's broken down into sprints. So every 10 years, there's a sprint. The first 10 years starts from 2021 to 2031. And that's why you see the AI strategy. We have the future food security strategy because food security is very important. We have the advanced sciences strategy because we need to make sure that we have advanced sciences. We have the future skills strategy as well to ensure that we have the skills necessary for us to be a part of the future. And then the well-being strategy to make our society more higher in terms of well-being. So long term, we know the view. It's be the best nation on earth in everything, in education, in healthcare, in society, etc. But we know that things are going to change. Technology is going to impact our lives. We can't actually forecast the future in such a scrutinizing way. We can't actually put KPIs for 2071. We know that the KPIs is to be number one, but the metrics are going to change over time. What we do know is certain technologies, certain things are going to impact our lives in the next 10 years. So let's put the first 10-year sprint. The 10-year sprint is broken down into three-year cycles. So in the first 3 years, for example, of the artificial intelligence strategy, we're focusing on building the capacity, we're focusing on putting the policies, and we're focusing on actually investing in the infrastructure. The next 3 years, we're going to focus on other elements that are going to make us achieve the 10-year vision.
I think in this, within this vision and the way forward, one question is, what are the top 3 industries that you look forward to revolutionize with AI investments, and what platforms are created to facilitate dialogue between industry and government?
I'm going to share a personal story here. I was just thinking to myself right now, I said, should I do this? I think I should. The last 48 hours were very depressing to me. They were 48 hours that I didn't sleep in. And I promise you that this is the case that I've been in for 48 hours. I was blessed with a newborn son a year and a half ago. And my son, to me, when he was born, was really seen as what I'm working for in the future. I want to leave a good legacy for him. I want to ensure that he has a better life in the UAE. And we were blessed to bring a nanny that was like a mother figure to him. Both me and his mother work. And she was a part of the family. She really took care of our son, and she was an extended part of our family. 2 days ago, we found out that she has cancer, stage 4, and that it was diagnosed very late. What saddens me is that we could have actually diagnosed this cancer, and we could actually save her, or we really can do something to save her. If we had the systems, if we invested in artificial intelligence, we could have diagnosed these diseases. But today, the doctors are very expensive. Getting appointments, it's very difficult. And really, hopefully she'll be able to survive. Hopefully we'll be able to do something to help her. But it's because of the lack of investment in technology that we are in this point today. I do see that artificial intelligence is going to transform healthcare. And I'm going to see that AI is being used to help people diagnose diseases and help improve the lives of people through healthcare. Because both radiology and pathology can be diagnosed with AI better than every human being. And you can actually give them the access to these systems in a very democratized manner. I hope that this is the last tragedy that we see in the near future in the UAE. But that's something that today I'm very passionate about, because I do feel the pain of someone who knows someone that he dears a lot that might be lost because of a disease.
Actually, this was a question asked by one of the participants about how to use AI in healthcare in a preventive mode. I think you just addressed that. Another question here is, Dennis, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and insights into the AI vision of the UAE. It all sounds to have been very successful with no challenges. Have you at any time during the path to become an AI hub encountered any challenges or drawbacks to adoption?
Every day is a challenge, every single day. And I don't think that you can advance anything in the world without actually overcoming the challenges. There's a challenge of changing people's mentalities. There's a challenge of proving the importance of the technology. We are very lucky to have a leadership in the UAE that is able to set a direction and people rally behind it. But there are naysayers. In everything that you do, there are people who hope that you fail. And there are people who don't believe in that future. So it's not all positive. But what I am going to say is, if I did not have the support of leadership, we would have failed from day one. Because since the first day of my appointment, there are people that said, this technology is going to be devastating to us. We should just ban it altogether. And changing these mentalities was very important. Even recently, when we talked about AI in the school curriculum, people were critical of that. They believed that it's too early for us to deploy AI in the school curriculum. But my argument was, today, who here has an ICDL certificate? Do you guys know what an ICDL certificate is? Yes? No? ICDL is something called the International Computer Driving License. So in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a certification that was given to people that taught them how to use the mouse, how to use a computer, how to go and type on a keyboard, how to use PowerPoint, and so on and so forth. And this is actually mandatory in the UAE. So for you to graduate school, you need to have an ICDL certificate. My question was to the people who were naysayers at the time, why do we still teach ICDL? A 2-year-old today can hold a smartphone, go on YouTube, watch any video that he wants or she wants, and access technology better than most adults. So let's replace ICDL with AI. It's as simple as that. So there were challenges. I'm not going to claim to not have challenges. But thankfully, to date, we're able to overcome some of these challenges.
There is another question about data privacy, which apparently is a major concern. What are the ethical considerations around how you go about implementing AI? What type of personal data will you not collect and why? And how do you protect people against their data from being misused elsewhere in the world, outside of the UAE?
When we look at where AI is going to be deployed in the UAE, we have a metric that we use to determine where we're going to deploy AI. The metric first and foremost, looks at how many jobs are going to be lost. Second, what is the economic impact of the deployment? And third is this going to change people's lives? If yes, it's going to change people's lives and a big portion of the population. If it's going to have a good economic impact, if not many people are going to lose their jobs, we're going to deploy AI. But the sectors that we chose for our strategy are non-controversial sectors. So, logistics. What private data is in logistics? Transferring goods from one place to another, making sure your ports are more efficient. Transport, when it comes to making sure that the actual infrastructure that we have in the UAE is one that uses AI, and self-driving cars is a great example of that. And smart grids, smart management systems. These are non-controversial systems that ensure that you improve the lives of citizens, relatively less people who are going to lose their jobs, and the impact is quite substantial. Oil and gas. Whose personal data are we going to touch if we use AI in oil and gas? So these sectors are very important to us. We're going to deploy AI in them. When it comes to talking about personal data, where it's being collected and how it's being used, Think AI as an initiative is actually created for that. So one of the tables, or the actual discussions in that forum, focuses on data collection, data protection, and also data categorization with regards to where people feel like their data is okay to be collected and where they think it should not be collected. And it's an open forum, by the way. Anyone can participate, anyone can contribute. So with this, we're able to actually adopt new thinking, and also ensure that everyone moves forward in the rightful manner. And then finally, when it comes to AI and data being used negatively abroad, there is only so much that we can do. And our job is to really go and speak to the big players. Our job is to go and try to pressure them to ensure that they follow the guidelines and the ambitions of the UAE. But sometimes abuses are going to be done. In that case, we really need to have a global coalition that ensures that smaller countries have the same voice as bigger countries. Because China can go and stop the internet. China can stop the big players from entering a 1.4 billion person market. But if I go to them and tell them, you either follow our guidelines or we're not going to allow you, having Google being cut off or some of these big platforms from the 9 or 10 million people in the UAE is going to lead to economic issues and social issues as well. So to overcome that, we need to have a coalition of countries that all agree that certain things are going to be done, others are going to be overcome. And we've done that through the multiple MOUs that we're signing. We're working with big players. So India is one of our partners. France is one of our partners. We actually got China to sign as well. So we are trying to ensure that people are protected.
I suppose in this context that you have been having a strategy of setting up a national cloud and encouraging UAE companies and industries to have their data locally here at your data centers, national cloud, and not to have it residing overseas.
So, we've been having this debate for a while. We do believe that localization of data is important, specifically data that is going to impact the livelihood and well-being of people. But there are other data points that, if you try to localize and to have them, hosted locally, you might actually be at a disadvantage with regards to attracting big companies to deploy their solutions or their investments in the UAE and other countries. So we're having this debate currently. I am for the discussion of ensuring that these centers are established locally, ensuring that data is localized, and not stopping the international players from being able to use certain data points that are not going to be detrimental to people's lives, that are not going to be impacting their livelihoods or the security, to other countries to ensure that they're more effective as a private sector company. So this is an ongoing debate. We hope to have an answer soon, but there are many different opposing points of view, and we need to ensure that the same way that we had open skies in the UAE, we did not believe in, monopolizing our air. And the same way that we opened our country for business for everyone, we want to ensure that AI is seen as something that can be used in the UAE, and the UAE can become a hub of in the long term. So we don't believe in monopolization. So there is a debate on how we can overcome this. I do believe that we're going to come around relatively quickly on this.
Hector says here, Your Excellency, you did mention about partnerships with some regions in the Middle East and Western countries and other institutions. What would be your insights and efforts to extend partnerships to African countries to help champion some of their challenges?
I was with the Prime Minister of Uganda today, and one of the reasons why we were meeting is because we are trying to help African countries, we're trying to help everyone. Because one of the challenges that this technology is going to bring is if it is advanced in certain geographies and not in others, we're going to see a lot of techlash. We are going to see a lot of revolts against the technology. And I don't think that this is healthy for anyone. If we are able to create a system that diagnoses disease in a way that improves people's lives in the UAE, it is going to be selfish for us to keep it in the UAE and not give it to Africa, or not to give it to Asia, or not to give it to other countries. The best way for us to create a positive future and develop this technology responsibly is to work with everyone and anyone. Yes, we're going to have competitive advantages if we deploy AI in logistics. We have the right to keep that here. But for certain applications that are going to improve the livelihoods of people and are not really going to create any issues for us, let's help the other countries in the world actually, learn and develop and advance in this. So this is our approach. We hosted something called the World Bank Capacity Building Program at the World Government Summit this year. And the capacity building program brought 100 government officials from Africa and from certain countries in Asia, so the least developed countries, to actually understand how they can leapfrog in the era of technology. So you don't need to follow the footsteps of countries that have legacy systems. You can actually leapfrog and make use of these technologies. This initiative was great. We're going to continue to do it with the World Bank. We're hosting the event. The World Bank is helping source the ministers from around the world. And I do believe that advancing this technology for everyone's sake is going to lead to a better future for all mankind.
I have a question from a very business-oriented participant. The question is, if a startup has a proven AI solution which could transform one of the high-priority sectors, how do they get easy access to you and your ministry for potential funding?
Well, this person already knows what he or she wants. I would say that we don't fund, if I'm going to be honest. But what we do actually do, and this is maybe something that you can look at, we have a platform called the Dubai Future Accelerators, which is a platform that incubates private sector entities with government entities for them to actually help overcome the challenges of the government. Joining this platform is going to give you two things. You might get a government contract in 6 weeks, so you'll be able to get a contract from a big player that is worth millions, and that will attract investment. The second is, a few years ago when we launched the accelerators, there was a relatively not known company with a crazy idea called Hyperloop One that came to us. And I remember they said, we want to do a tube, Elon Musk talked about it, blah, blah, blah. And we don't have anything, we just have an idea. So we said, come on board, join the accelerators. They joined the accelerators. They were actually incubated with DP World, which is our ports operator. They actually were incubated with the Roads and Transport Authority. And before the actual cohort was ended, on the final week, DP World invested $50 million in that company. So there are ways for you to access funding through some of the platforms that we lead, but we actually don't invest in startups. My job is to regulate. My job is to improve the ecosystem. Investing in startups, you can go to Mubadala, you can go to Adia, you can go to the big investment funds that actually focus on this.
I have used all the questions from the floor. Let me go back to my questions. So this past April, there was the inauguration here in Dubai of your National Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in partnership with the World Economic Forum of Davos. Could you please tell us about the objectives of such center and expected contribution to boosting business competitiveness of the UAE?
The center was a center that we've been discussing with the World Economic Forum for a few years now. The ambitions of the center are very simple. We need to understand every point of view if we will plan effectively. And having access to a big network allows you to be able to plan more proactively, to see every different point of view, and to ensure that your strategy is solid to a certain degree. Our center focuses on three things. It focuses on AI, precision medicine, and blockchain. We want to become the center that develops the cutting edge thinking for these three sectors, and as well deploys solutions that impact the lives of people. And tapping into the World Economic Forum's network is actually something that's very positive from that center. But we will also use the World Economic Forum to export these solutions to the rest of the world. So as we said, it's not just for the UAE. The UAE is going to be the proving grounds, but we want other countries to benefit. Precision medicine is key for countries that want to develop their healthcare industry. Blockchain is great if we actually all integrate blockchain into our fabric of government and ensure transparency, ensure security as well. And AI, we're looking currently at AI in procurement in government, because as you know, government is very inefficient. Procurement in government is even more inefficient. If you look at how government procures today, there are so many issues that can be overcome. So the World Economic Forum and us, we're looking at how can we deploy AI in procurement in an effective manner that ensures that government can be more efficient in sourcing the things that they need to source.
No more questions from the floor. I am tempted to follow on what President Manzoni has done yesterday, giving you 2-3 minutes of a buzz group to share among your neighbors the main takeaway, the main insight that you have gained from His Excellency's presentation. So why don't we do that? 2-3 minutes, and let's give His Excellency a break before we pick it up. Good. So I'm going to give the floor back to His Excellency because we got 2 questions in the meantime, which are quite important, related to AI education, curriculum, and train the trainers in the field.
Thank you. One of the questions that was asked, and I think it's an important question, how do you prepare teachers if you're going to create the curriculum? And you realize that we're launching the curriculum 2.5 years after the strategy was announced and after the minister was appointed. The reason being is because training the teachers requires time. And if you think about it, the lower the level of complexity, so from grade 4, 5, 6, the less training these teachers need, because it's all about block coding. It's all about really relatively easy things to grasp. But the more advanced curriculum from grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, the more education these teachers need. So to actually train the teachers, we did a few efforts. The first is a day of the week for every single teacher in the UAE was allocated for training. So the training was given to actually push teachers to learn new skills, to push teachers to be able to understand more, and to really elevate the level of teachers. There was a lot of efforts as well put together on attracting the right talent in the teaching sector in the UAE, because teachers are at the core of how do you develop generations that will lead your country. If you don't have good teachers, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're not going to succeed in the future. And finally, we haven't proven ourselves yet. So don't take this as evidence that we're going to succeed. January is going to be when we deploy. We're going to see how good the teachers are. We're going to see how well the students grasp the curriculum. We do have a good feeling, but even if it proves to be something that needs to be improved, we're going to improve. Because there needs to be investment in talent, and the best way to do that is to revolutionize the schooling system. So, hopefully I'll be able to share with you next time I see you the updates on this issue.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this great presentation. Would you please give a warm round of applause to Minister Al Olama.